I used to think insomnia was the worst thing that could happen to someone. Turns out, I was wrong. What's worse is learning to sleep too well. My name is Jack Worley, and I'm a cartographer for the U.S. Geological Survey here in Colorado. Or at least, I was. It's hard to know what I am anymore. For 15 years, I've spent my days mapping terrain, translating the three-dimensional complexity of the Rockies into flat, comprehensible lines on paper. There's something meditative about it, reducing the incomprehensible into something people can understand and use. Maybe that's why I got so obsessed with mapping my dreams. It started last winter, during a brutal stretch of February cold. I'd always been a light sleeper, the kind of person who'd wake up if a neighbor 3 houses down started their car. My wife Denise used to joke that I slept like a deer, always half alert, ready to bolt. But that February, work stress had me grinding my teeth so hard I cracked a molar. My dentist, Dr. Kovich, recommended meditation apps and sleep podcasts. That's when I stumbled onto lucid dreaming. For those who don't know, lucid dreaming is becoming aware you're dreaming while still asleep. Some people can even control what happens, fly around, summon whatever they want, live out fantasies. The forums I found made it sound like a superpower anyone could learn with enough practice. Dream journals, reality checks, specific sleep schedules. I followed every instruction like they were USGS survey protocols. It took 6 weeks before I succeeded. That first lucid dream, I flew over Boulder at sunrise, the Flatirons glowing orange beneath me. I could feel the wind, smell the pine. I visited my childhood home in Colorado Springs, sat on the porch with my dad who died in 2019, and told him everything I'd wanted to say at his funeral but couldn't. It felt more real than real. For 3 months, lucid dreaming was everything. I explored ice caves in the Rockies that don't exist, drove a '67 Mustang through the streets of Denver at speeds that would have killed me awake, even had conversations with historical figures I'd always admired. The dreams were so vivid, so controlled, that waking life started feeling like the dream. But then something changed. The more I knew I was dreaming, the less anything mattered. The mountains I flew over were paintings, not places. The people I talked to were hollow, reflections without substance. Even Denise, when she appeared in dreams, felt wrong, like talking to a photograph that had learned to move. I gained complete control over my dreams only to discover that control had made them meaningless. So I started researching. Not just lucid dreaming, but the nature of dreams themselves. Sleep studies, neurological theories, even philosophical texts about consciousness. I read everything from peer-reviewed journals to fringe message boards where people claimed dreams connected to parallel dimensions. One night, reading through a particularly strange forum thread, I had a thought that wouldn't let go. What if lucid dreaming wasn't the deepest you could go? What if there was something beneath? I couldn't find anyone online who'd tried going deeper. Every forum, every subreddit, every blog post, they all stopped at lucid dreaming, as if that were the finish line. But I kept thinking about it in cartographic terms. If you're mapping terrain and you reach what looks like flat ground, you don't just stop. You check for sinkholes, caves, underground rivers. There's always another layer. I decided to try something different. If I could become conscious inside a dream, maybe I could meditate inside that dream, push through to whatever lay beneath. Denise thought I was getting obsessed. She wasn't wrong. I'd come home from work, eat a quick dinner, and immediately start my pre-sleep routine. Reality checks every half hour. Dream journal entries that filled 3 notebooks. I'd set alarms for specific REM cycles, wake myself up, then fall back asleep using WILD techniques. "You're spending more time asleep than awake," she said one morning, watching me stumble to the coffee maker. "And you look worse than when you couldn't sleep at all." I told her I was fine. I told her I was close to something important. that wasn't exactly a lie. The first time I tried meditating in a lucid dream, I was walking through Estes Park. The dream version, anyway, everything slightly off, the way dreams always are. The Stanley Hotel was painted green instead of white. The mountains in the distance had extra peaks. I sat down on the bench outside a coffee shop and closed my eyes. In a dream. It felt absurd, like closing a door that was already closed. I focused on my breathing, counting each inhale and exhale the way I'd learned from those meditation apps. At first, nothing happened. I could hear dream people walking past, their conversations bleeding into each other, fragments about weather and work and weekend plans. Then the sounds began to fade. My body started to feel heavy. Not tired heavy, not like falling asleep. This was different. Like gravity had suddenly intensified, pulling me down through the bench, through the dream itself. I weighed more with each breath. What started as mild pressure became crushing. I panicked and opened my eyes. I was back on the bench in Estes Park, breathing hard, dream sweat on my forehead. My heart hammered, even though I knew my actual heart, my sleeping body's heart, was probably beating normally on my bed back home. I woke up 3 minutes later according to my bedside clock, 4:17 a.m. But I couldn't stop thinking about that weight, that sensation of being pulled somewhere. Over the next month, I practiced every night I could maintain lucidity. Each time I meditated in a dream, I could endure the weight a little longer. I learned to recognize the stages. First, a sense of heaviness in my limbs, then my chest, as if the air itself was pressing down. Finally, my entire body would feel like it was made of stone, then iron, then something denser than any element I could name. I started keeping a separate journal just for these experiments. I logged each attempt, noting how long I could maintain the meditation before the pressure forced me to stop. 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Once I made it to 8 minutes before my lungs felt like they'd collapse and I had to surface back into the regular dream. Denise found the journal in my nightstand. She flipped through pages of sketches, rough maps I'd drawn, trying to visualize what I was feeling. Diagrams with arrows pointing downward through layers I had labeled lucid, weighted, and below that, a question mark. "Jack, this isn't healthy," she said, sitting on the edge of our bed. "You're turning sleep into work. Maybe into something worse than work." "I'm close," I told her. "I can feel it. There's something below the lucid state, a deeper level of consciousness. Or you're just suffocating yourself in your sleep." I couldn't explain why I knew she was wrong, but I did know. The weight wasn't suffocation. It was a threshold. And last Tuesday night, I finally crossed it. The dream started normally enough. I was hiking a trail near Mount Evans, one I'd surveyed 2 summers ago. The aspens were in full gold, leaves shimmering in sunlight that felt like honey. I knew immediately I was dreaming. The trail markers were in the wrong places, and the elevation gain didn't match the terrain. I found a flat boulder and sat down, closed my eyes, started counting breaths. The weight came faster this time, like my body recognized what I was trying to do. My legs became stone, my torso filled with concrete. My skull felt like an anvil balanced on my neck. But I'd trained for this, learned to accept the sensation rather than fight it. The pressure built. I was a boulder sinking through mud, a truck breaking through ice. My ribs compressed. I couldn't draw air, or whatever passed for air in dreams. Then something new, a pulling sensation, like hooks embedded in my sternum, my spine, the back of my skull. Invisible hands tugging me apart from the inside. Every cell in my dream body wanted to separate from every other cell. I tried to open my eyes, to abort the meditation and return to the hiking trail. My eyelids wouldn't respond. The pulling intensified. My chest felt like it was being opened by cold fingers reaching through my ribs. Somewhere far away, I heard myself scream. But whether it was my dream voice or my real voice, my sleeping body thrashing in bed, I couldn't tell. The world went black. When I could see again, I was standing, not on the trail, not in any Colorado I recognized. The ground beneath my boots was covered in dead grass, brittle and gray as ash. It crunched when I shifted my weight. Above me stretched a sky that made my stomach drop. Pure black. But not the black of night. This was void black, empty black, the kind of dark that suggested nothing had ever existed there. Threaded through it were clouds the color of old blood, moving in patterns that hurt to watch. Behind the clouds, I could see stars, galaxies, cosmic structures I didn't have names for. I looked down, trying to orient myself. That's when I saw them. Heads. Hundreds of them. Thousands. They protruded from the ground like plants, buried up to the neck in the gray soil, row after row stretching to the horizon in every direction. Most had their eyes closed, faces slack. Some looked peaceful, asleep in the normal sense. Others had faces twisted in distress, brows furrowed, lips pulled back from teeth. From the crown of each head, a thread emerged, thin and luminous, glowing with a faint silver-blue light. The thread stretched upward, disappearing into the black sky above. I took a step forward. The dead grass crackled. A woman's head nearby, elderly, wrinkled face framed by white hair, let out a moan without opening her eyes. My training as a cartographer kicked in automatically. Some part of my brain was already trying to map this place, to make sense of the layout. The heads seemed randomly distributed at first glance, but there were clusters, patterns. Some threads glowed brighter than others. I walked closer to the nearest head, a man in his 30s with a thick beard. His face was calm, almost serene. The thread above him pulsed gently, like a heartbeat made visible. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. My voice sounded wrong here. Too flat. Like the black sky absorbed sound the same way it absorbed light. I turned slowly, trying to take in the scope of what I was seeing. The field of heads extended in every direction. Miles of them. Maybe more. How many people were here? 1 million? 10 million? Every sleeping person on Earth? That's when I noticed I wasn't alone. About 50 yards away, a figure moved between the heads. A man, I thought, though something about his proportions seemed off. He wore what looked like an old suit, the kind my grandfather might have worn in the 1950s. Dark fabric, narrow lapels. He was hunched over, examining the heads carefully, one after another. In his hands, he carried something. Large scissors, the ceremonial kind used for ribbon cuttings. The blades caught the light from the threads, reflecting it in strange ways. As I watched, he stopped at one head. A young woman with dark skin and braided hair. Her face was contorted in obvious distress. The man positioned his scissors around the thread above her head. He cut it. The thread separated with a sound like a violin string snapping. The severed end faded into nothing. The woman's face relaxed immediately. After several seconds, the thread began to grow back, but dimmer than before, thinner. The man looked up. He was staring directly at me. "You shouldn't be here." The man's voice carried across the field clearly despite the distance between us. He straightened up from the head he'd been examining and started walking toward me. I wanted to run. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around, to wake myself up, to get out of this place. But I couldn't move. My legs had locked. As he got closer, I tried to focus on his face. That's when I realized something was wrong with my perception. I could see his features, eyes, nose, mouth, all present. But the moment I tried to hold them in my mind, they slipped away like water through fingers. It wasn't that his face was changing, it was that my brain couldn't commit it to memory. I'd look at his eyes, register their color, blue, gray, brown, and then immediately forget what I'd seen. His nose was there, but I couldn't have described it even with a gun to my head. "I asked you a question," he said, stopping about 10 feet away. "What are you doing here?" I was meditating in a lucid dream. I pushed through to... "I know how you got here," he interrupted. "That's not what I'm asking." Why would you do something that stupid? The scissors in his hands looked antique, the metal dark with age. The handles were ornate, carved with designs I couldn't quite make out. I wanted to see if there was something deeper than lucid dreaming, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I'm a cartographer. I map things. That's what I do." A cartographer. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Well, congratulations. You found new territory. Hope you're happy. What is this place?" He gestured broadly at the field of heads. "This is where people really sleep. The actual sleep, beneath all the dream noise your brain generates. And the threads? Those connect them to what's up there." He pointed at the black sky with his scissors. "Most of the time, the threads just exist. Background connection. But sometimes, people dream too hard. They push their consciousness up those threads, reaching out toward." He trailed off, squinting at the sky. "Well, toward things they shouldn't reach toward." "What things?" "You really want to know?" He turned his unrememberable face toward me. "Because once you know, you can't unknow. Your brain won't let you forget it. Not even when you wake up. Most people, their subconscious protects them, scrubs the dangerous dreams clean before they wake up. But you push through all those protections. You're too aware now." I thought about turning back. I thought about closing my eyes and willing myself awake. But I'd come this far. "Tell me." He sighed. "Your funeral. See those?" He pointed up at what I'd thought were galaxies. "Those aren't stars. Well, some of them are. But the others? The ones that look wrong. Those are them." "Them?" "The things that live in the actual universe. The real universe. Not the little bubble of space-time you experience when you're awake. Things older than your sun. Things that don't like sharing their space with anything else." Ahead near us, a teenage boy with acne scars suddenly screamed. His eyes stayed closed, but his mouth opened wide, voice raw with terror. The thread above him pulsed bright red. The man moved quickly, positioning his scissors around the boy's thread. He cut. The scream stopped immediately, replaced by gentle breathing. The thread regrew, barely visible. "What did you just do?" Saved his mind. The man wiped his forehead with his sleeve. That kid was dreaming his way right up his thread, getting close enough to sense them. Another few minutes, and he'd have gotten their attention. He looked at me. And once they notice you, they don't forget. But he'll be fine now. He won't remember the dream. Won't remember what he almost saw. He'll wake up feeling vaguely anxious, maybe, but alive. Still himself. The man started walking again, continuing his rounds through the field. I followed. I spend every night cutting threads, dampening the dreams that reach too far, keeping humanity under the radar. Every night? Forever? Someone has to. He stopped at an older woman whose thread burned bright yellow. Before me, someone else did it. Before them, someone else. It's not a job you retire from. How did you get stuck doing this? He positioned his scissors but hesitated. Same way you're about to, if you're not careful. I got curious. I pushed too deep. I saw things I wasn't meant to see. And now I can't leave. He cut the woman's thread. The knowledge binds you here. You become part of the system you discovered. My chest tightened. I can leave, though. I can wake up. Sure. This time. But you'll come back. Now that you know this place exists, now that you've seen it, your meditation will bring you here every time. And eventually, he gestured at the endless field. Eventually, you'll think about them too much. You wonder what they really look like, what they really are. And your curiosity will pull their attention down here. As if on cue, a deep rumble rolled across the sky. I looked up. One of the distant galaxies, or what I'd thought was a galaxy, was changing. Colors shifted through spectrums that shouldn't exist. Tendrils began extending from its center, reaching out through the void. They stretched for what must have been light years, growing toward us like roots searching for water. The rumble became a sound. Not a sound that traveled through air, but something that bypassed my ears entirely and resonated in my bones, in my teeth, and the base of my skull. Every head in the field began to scream. Thousands of voices, all at once, eyes closed and mouths open. The sound was unbearable. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The screaming came from inside me as much as around me. The man grabbed my shoulder. Stop thinking about them. Now. I'm not. Yes, you are. You're staring right at it, wondering what it is, and it can feel your attention. He shook me hard. Think about something else. Your wife, your job, anything mundane. Do it now. I forced my eyes away from the sky. I thought about my office at USGS, the smell of old coffee and printer toner, the stack of unfinished survey maps on my desk, Denise making breakfast last Sunday, burnt toast and overcooked eggs, our dog Chester who died 3 years ago, and how he used to sleep across my feet. Slowly, the rumbling faded. The screaming decreased, heads falling silent one by one. When I finally looked up again, the galaxy thing had stopped expanding. Its tendrils retracted. After several long minutes, it looked dormant again. The man released my shoulder. It was a close one. Jesus Christ. Not even close. He bent down to examine a nearby thread, his hands shaking slightly. Listen, cartographer. You want my advice? Don't come back here. Meditate all you want in your regular lucid dreams, but don't push through to this place again. But what if? There is no what if. This isn't a place for exploration. This isn't terrain to be mapped. He looked at me, his forgettable face somehow conveying absolute seriousness. This is the edge of everything. The boundary between you and them. And boundaries exist for a reason. I need to understand. No, he said firmly. You need to leave. I woke up with Denise shaking me. Jack, wake up. My eyes opened. Our bedroom ceiling, the digital clock on the nightstand read 6:43 a.m. Sunlight filtered through the curtains. Everything normal, everything safe, except I was covered in sweat. The sheets beneath me was soaked through. You were making noises, Denise said, her hand on my shoulder. Not screaming, exactly. More like, I don't know, like you were trying to talk but couldn't get the words out. I sat up slowly. My head felt stuffed with cotton. What time did I go to sleep? Around 11. You okay? You look awful. I touched my face, my hands were shaking. Bad dream. Must have been. She studied me with concern. You want to talk about it? More than anything, I wanted to tell her. About the gray field and the sleeping heads and the man with the scissors. About the things in the sky that weren't stars. About the screaming. But I couldn't. Not because I didn't trust her, but because explaining it felt like it would make it more real. Like speaking the words would cement the knowledge in my mind permanently. I don't really remember it. I lied. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she didn't push. Okay, I'm going to make coffee. You should shower. You're drenched. After she left, I sat there for several minutes. My body felt strange, heavy but hollow at the same time, like I'd run a marathon while someone slowly drained my blood. I checked my dream journal out of habit. The last entry was from 2 days ago. Nothing about last night. My hand hovered over the pen, but I couldn't bring myself to write it down. What would I even say? Meditated past lucid dreaming. Found the real place where people sleep. Met a man who cuts dreams to save humanity from cosmic horrors. Was warned never to return. Reading that back, I'd think I'd lost my mind. The next 3 days were the worst of my life. I went to work. I sat at my desk. I stared at survey maps and tried to focus on topographic lines and elevation markers, but my mind kept drifting back to the field. The gray grass, the endless rows of heads, the threads reaching up into that horrible sky. At home, I avoided sleep as long as I could. I'd stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning, reading, watching television, doing anything to keep my eyes open. When exhaustion finally dragged me under, I'd have regular dreams, normal dreams, flying over mountains, conversations with dead relatives, the usual unconscious noise. But I could feel it beneath everything, that weight, that threshold, like a trap door in the floor of my mind that I now knew existed but couldn't forget about. On the 4th night, I gave in. I didn't plan to. I told myself I wouldn't. But as I lay in bed next to Denise, listening to her breathing slow and deepen, I felt the pull. The knowledge of that place was like a fishhook in my brain, and something was reeling me in. I achieved lucidity quickly, too quickly. I was walking through downtown Boulder, and within seconds I recognized the dream signs. A coffee shop where a bank should be, mountains in the wrong direction, people's faces shifting when I wasn't looking directly at them. I found a quiet spot behind the public library and sat down. I knew what I was doing was stupid. The man had warned me. But I had questions, so many questions, and I'd spent my entire career mapping the unknown. How could I discover something like this and just walk away? I closed my eyes and began to meditate. The weight came immediately, crushing and familiar. I didn't fight it. I let myself sink through the layers of consciousness like dropping through water into deeper and deeper trenches. The pulling sensation started. Hooks in my chest, my spine, my skull. The tearing feeling as my awareness separated from my dream body. Blackness. Then gray grass beneath my feet. I was back. The field looked the same. infinite heads stretching to the horizon, glowing threads rising into the void black sky, the blood-red clouds moving in patterns that made my eyes ache. I told you not to come back. I turned. The man was standing about 20 feet away, scissors in hand. His unrememberable face regarded me with what I thought might be disappointment. "I have questions," I said. "Of course you do." He walked past me to examine a nearby head, a woman in her 50s with gray streaked hair. Her expression was peaceful. He nodded in satisfaction and moved to the next one. "Everyone who comes here has questions. That's the problem." I followed him. "How long have you been doing this?" "Time works differently here. Subjectively, could be 100 years. Could be 1,000. I stopped counting. He knelt down to get a closer look at a man's thread. It was pulsing orange. "Out there, in the waking world, I died in 1952. Car accident outside of Pittsburgh. But I wasn't really dead. Part of me was here. Had been for years before that." "So your body died, but you kept going?" "Yeah." He stood up, apparently satisfied the orange thread wasn't a threat yet. "The physical body is just an anchor. When it fails, if you're already bound to this place, you stay. Forever." He looked at me. "That's what you're risking every time you come here. The knowledge is already in you, already binding you. Die in your sleep wrong and you'll end up like me." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the gray field's temperature. "What were you?" I asked. "Before?" "A physicist. Theoretical work on consciousness and quantum mechanics. I thought I was so smart." He laughed bitterly. "I developed a meditation technique to explore altered states of awareness. Thought I'd unlock some great mystery about the nature of reality. And I did. Just not the mystery I wanted." We walked in silence for a while. I watched him work, examining threads, occasionally cutting one when it burned too bright. Each cut was accompanied by that violin string snap sound, followed by immediate relief on the sleeper's face. "Why scissors?" I asked. "You said before that's just what my brain interprets them as. What are they really?" "A tool. A function. A way of interfacing with the threads that your conscious mind can't process directly, so it creates a visual metaphor." He stopped walking and turned to face me fully. "You want to know the real question you should be asking?" "What?" "Why you're here at all. Why you can be here. Most people can't reach this place, no matter how hard they try. Their subconscious has safeguards, walls their conscious mind can't breach. But some people are different. Some people have thin boundaries between layers of consciousness. Makes them creative, insightful, sometimes unstable, and vulnerable." "Vulnerable to what?" "To seeing too much. To pushing too far." He gestured at the field. "Every person here is asleep, dreaming their shallow dreams, protected by the filters their brains provide. But people like you and me, we can slip through those filters. And once you know how..." He trailed off, looking up at the sky. I followed his gaze. The galaxies hung there, distant and wrong. Now that I knew what they really were, I could see the wrongness more clearly. They moved subtly, shifting in ways that violated physics, and I swear some of them were closer than they'd been during my last visit. "They're moving," I said quietly. "They're always moving. The question is whether they're moving towards something or just drifting. He looked back at me. And every time someone like you comes here, every time you think about them too hard, you might be giving them a reason to drift in our direction. Then why tell me about them at all? Why not just send me away without explaining? Because if I don't tell you, you'll guess. You'll theorize. You'll imagine. And imagination is sometimes worse than knowledge because it's unpredictable. He started walking again, faster now. At least if you know what they are, you know what not to think about. What not to look at. We came to a section of the field where the heads seemed more agitated. Multiple faces twisted in distress, threads glowing bright red and yellow. The man moved quickly between them, cutting threads with swift, practiced motions. Are they all having nightmares? I asked. They're all touching the same thing. Probably a major disaster somewhere in the waking world, earthquake maybe, or a terrorist attack. When something traumatic happens, it ripples through the collective consciousness, makes the threads more active, more likely to reach too far. He cut another thread. This is going to be a long night. Can I help? He stopped mid-cut and stared at me. Are you insane? I know how this works now. I understand. You understand nothing. He finished cutting the thread he'd been working on. You think because you visited twice, you're qualified to protect humanity's unconscious mind from cosmic horrors. You think it's that simple. I could learn. You said yourself, you're going to be here forever. Wouldn't it help to have someone else? No. The word came out sharp and final. The last thing I need is a curious cartographer stumbling around thinking he can map something that doesn't follow any physical laws you understand. This isn't terrain, Jack. This isn't elevation and longitude. This is the space between what you think reality is and what it actually is. He moved to the next cluster of agitated sleepers, his scissors flashing as he worked. I watched, feeling useless and foolish. After a long silence, he spoke again, quieter this time. You want to help? Don't come back. Live your life. Love your wife. Map your mountains. Forget this place exists. He glanced at me. And whatever you do, don't look up too long at what's in the sky. Don't wonder about them. Don't try to understand them. Because the moment you do, the moment your curiosity becomes strong enough, they'll notice. What happens then? I don't know. He finished cutting the last thread in the cluster and straightened up. No one's ever survived long enough to tell me. A rumble rolled across the sky. Distant, barely perceptible, but there. The man and I both froze. Time for you to leave, he said. Now. I didn't leave. Not right away. Did you hear me? The man was staring at me, scissors gripped tight. You need to go. Just tell me one more thing, I said. How do I stop coming back? You said the knowledge binds me here. How do I break that? The rumble came again, louder this time. Several heads near us began to moan. You can't, he said simply. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Once you know this place exists, once you've been here, part of you will always be pulled back. The best you can do is resist. Don't meditate in your lucid dreams. Keep yourself in the shallow end. And if I can't, He didn't answer. He was looking up at the sky, his body tense. I followed his gaze and immediately wished I hadn't. One of the galaxy things was moving. Not drifting. Moving with intent. Tendrils extended from its center, each one large enough to encompass solar systems. They reached down toward us, growing longer, coming closer. "Oh no," the man whispered. "No, no, no." What did I do? You stayed too long. Asked too many questions. Thought about them too much. He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "You need to wake up. Right now. Don't fight it. Don't resist. Just think about your body in bed and wake up." I tried. I closed my eyes and thought about my bedroom, about Denise sleeping beside me, about the feel of my pillow and the weight of the blanket. But nothing happened. I was still standing in the gray field. "It's not working," I said, panic creeping into my voice. "Try harder." He shook me. "Your body is in REM sleep, somewhere around stage 3 or 4. You need to trigger a wakeful response. Think about falling. Think about being chased. Anything that would normally jolt you awake." The rumble became a roar. Not sound exactly, but a vibration in the base of reality. Every head in the field was screaming now, thousands of voices crying out in unconscious terror. I thought about falling off a cliff, about being in a car crash, about drowning. Nothing worked. The field remained solid around me. "Why can't I leave?" I shouted over the screaming. "Because it's interested in you." The man pointed up at the descending tendrils. "You've caught its attention and it's holding you here. It wants to see what you are." The tendrils were close enough now that I could make out details. They weren't solid, more like they were made of folded space, dimensions bent in on themselves. Looking at them made my head ache, made my thoughts slip sideways in the configurations that didn't make sense. One tendril reached down toward a cluster of heads. As I got closer, the threads above those heads turned black, the faces contorted in expressions beyond normal human agony. Then, one by one, the threads snapped. Not cut cleanly, like when the man used his scissors. They shredded, tore apart, dissolved into nothing. "No." The man ran toward the cluster, but he was too far away. Within seconds, a dozen threads had been destroyed. The faces of those sleepers went slack, not peaceful but empty, like nobody was home anymore. "What happened to them?" I asked. "They're gone." He stood among the ruined threads, shoulders slumped. "Their minds just erased. When they wake up, if they wake up, they'll be hollow. No personality, no memories, just biological machines running on instinct." The tendril moved on to another cluster. More threads turned black, more snapped and dissolved. "You have to stop it," I yelled. "I can't." He turned to me and I could see genuine fear in his forgettable features. The scissors work on dreams, on the threads people create when they reach too far. But this is different. This is them reaching down. There's no defense against that. The roaring intensified. I felt it in my bones, in my teeth, in the meat of my brain. And beneath it, I heard something else. A voice, maybe, or multiple voices speaking in unison. They formed words in a language I didn't know but somehow understood. "What are you?" The question wasn't directed at the sleeping heads. It was directed at me. I opened my mouth to answer but couldn't form words. My throat had locked up. You are awake in the place of sleep. You are conscious in the realm of unconsciousness. What are you? Don't answer. The man was running back toward me. Don't engage with it. But I wasn't trying to engage. I couldn't have spoken if I wanted to. The presence behind the voice was too vast, too alien. It felt like being examined by something that existed in more dimensions than my mind had concepts for. Curious. You see but do not understand. You know but cannot comprehend. You are the gap between awareness and wisdom. The tendril nearest to me changed direction. It moved toward me specifically, folding space as it approached. The gray grass beneath my feet began to wither, turning to dust. The man reached me and grabbed my shoulders. Listen to me very carefully. What I'm about to do, you can't watch. Close your eyes. Don't open them no matter what you hear. And when you feel the pull, don't fight it. Let it take you back. What are you going to do? Something I swore I'd never do again. He released me and stepped forward, positioning himself between me and the descending tendril. Close your eyes. I closed them. What happened next I experienced through sound and sensation alone. I heard the man's voice, but it wasn't speaking English. It wasn't speaking any human language. The syllables felt wrong, like they came from a throat that wasn't shaped for human anatomy. The words themselves seemed to bend the air around them. The roaring stopped. The screaming stopped. Everything went absolutely silent. Then I felt it. A pulling sensation, but different from before. Not hooks dragging me apart, but a gentle tug like a current in water. I let myself drift with it, still keeping my eyes closed. The gray field fell away. I tumbled through darkness, through layers of consciousness, through the weight and the meditation, and back into. I gasped awake in my bed. The niece was asleep beside me, undisturbed. The clock read 3:47 a.m. I'd been under for less than 4 hours. I lay there, breathing hard, staring at the ceiling. My whole body was trembling. After a few minutes, I got up and went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face. In the mirror, I looked older, tired in a way sleep wouldn't fix. I should have been relieved. I'd escaped. Whatever the man had done, it had worked. I was back in the real world, safe in my house, with my wife sleeping peacefully down the hall. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Not in the world, but in me. Over the next week, I tried to return to normal life. I went to work. I avoided meditation. I stayed up late watching television to delay sleep. When I did sleep, I forced myself to remain in shallow dreams, never pushing toward lucidity. It almost worked. But every night as I drifted off, I could feel that place beneath. The weight. The threshold. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that eventually, I would go back. Not because I wanted to, but because something was pulling me there. The man had said the knowledge binds you. What he didn't say was that sometimes the binding works both ways. It wasn't just that I knew about the field of sleeping heads. The field knew about me. I started noticing things. Small things at first. When I looked at people on the street, sometimes I'd see a faint shimmer above their heads, barely visible like heat distortion, the ghost of their threads, bleeding through into waking reality. At night, if I concentrated, I could feel other people's dreams around me. Neighbors having nightmares, my wife dreaming about her mother who died last year, the woman in the apartment below us dreaming about flying. I was developing a sense for the field even while awake. The boundary between layers of consciousness was thinning for me. Denise noticed. She asked if I was feeling okay, if I wanted to see a doctor. I told her I was fine, just stressed about work. Another lie. 2 weeks after my second visit to the field, I had my first seizure. I was at work, looking at a survey map of the Sangre de Cristo range, when the world started to flicker. The office disappeared, replaced by the gray field for just a second, then back to the office, then the field again, like someone was flipping a switch between realities. I collapsed. When I came to, I was on the floor with 3 coworkers standing over me, and an ambulance was on its way. The doctors ran tests, EEG, MRI, blood work. Everything came back normal. They called it a one-time event, probably stress-related, prescribed medication just in case. But I knew what had really happened. The barrier between waking and sleeping was breaking down inside me. I was becoming unstuck from normal consciousness. That night, I didn't even have to meditate to reach the field. I simply fell asleep, and when I opened my eyes, I was standing in the gray grass. The man was waiting for me. "Welcome back," he said. "I was wondering when you'd show up again. I didn't mean to come here. I just fell asleep and I know." He turned and started walking through the field. "It's accelerating for you. The binding process. You'll be here full time soon enough. There has to be a way to stop it." He looked back at me, and for the first time, his forgettable face held something like pity. There was. About 2 weeks ago, before you came back the second time. But you couldn't stay away. You're saying I'm trapped. I'm saying you're becoming like me. He stopped walking and turned to face me fully. The question is, are you going to accept it or fight it? Because fighting only makes it worse. "I have a wife," I said, "a job, a life. I'm not ready to give all that up." Nobody ever is. The man resumed walking and I followed. But it's not really a choice. You pushed through the barriers, you saw what you weren't meant to see, and now you're paying the price. The seizure is your brain trying to reconcile 2 states of consciousness existing simultaneously. Your mind is in both places at once now, awake in the field, asleep in your bed. The seizure was what happens when those 2 states try to occupy your consciousness at the same time. We walked past hundreds of sleeping heads. Most were calm now, their threads pulsing with gentle light. Whatever crisis had happened in the waking world seemed to have passed. "What did you do?" I asked. 2 weeks ago, when that thing was reaching for me. What was that language you spoke? He was quiet for a long time. Finally, their language, or as close as a human throat can approximate it. You spoke to it? I got its attention, redirected its curiosity away from you and onto me. He stopped at the head whose thread was glowing bright purple. Unusual, but not threatening. He examined it carefully before moving on. It cost me. Bringing their focus onto yourself, even briefly, burns away parts of your mind. Parts you don't get back. What parts did you lose? My name, for one. I know I had one. I remember having a wife who used it, colleagues who wrote it on papers with mine. But the actual name? Gone. Burned out when I spoke to them. He gestured vaguely. Other things, too. Memories of childhood, my mother's face, the smell of coffee, small things that made me human. I felt sick. And you did that for me? Don't flatter yourself. I did it for everyone. He pointed at the field of heads. If it had finished examining you, had gotten a full understanding of what you were, it might have become interested in the rest of them. Humanity might have drawn enough attention to warrant investigation. And that would be the end of everything. So I'm a liability. You're a crack in the wall, a weak point that might let them through. He turned to look at me. That's why you need to stay here. Learn to cut threads. Help me keep everyone safe. Because if you go back to the waking world and keep having seizures, keep flickering between states, you might accidentally show them a path they've been looking for. A path to what? To consciousness itself. To the source of all those threads. He started walking again, faster now. They're old, Jack. Older than Earth, than the sun, than most of the matter in the universe. They've been drifting through the cosmos for eons, and they've consumed entire civilizations, species that made humanity look primitive. But those species were all bound by physical form, biology, matter. And we're different? Consciousness is different. The threads, the feel, this place, it's all manifestation of something they can't quite reach, can't quite understand. They exist in physical dimensions, even if those dimensions are beyond our comprehension. But consciousness, that might be the one thing that exists outside their domain. He stopped abruptly. We'd reached a section of the field I hadn't seen before. The heads here were different, older, their skin gray and papery. Many of the threads were dark, barely glowing. These are the ones who've been asleep the longest, the man said quietly. Coma patients, persistent vegetative states. The ones whose bodies forgot how to wake up. Are they still in there? I asked. Some of them. Others are vacant. The threads are there, but nothing's flowing through them anymore. He knelt down beside an elderly man whose thread was so dim I could barely see it. I try to visit them when I can. Even if they can't wake up, they deserve someone to check on them. Watching him there, tending to a sleeper who would never wake, I felt something shift. The man wasn't a monster or a cosmic guard. He was a caretaker, a gardener tending an impossible garden. You said you were a physicist, I said. In Pittsburgh, 1952. That's right. What was your wife's name? He looked up at me sharply. What? You said you lost your own name when you spoke to them, but you didn't mention losing hers. His expression, what I could perceive of it, went carefully blank. I didn't lose it. I gave it up. Why? Because holding on to it made the work harder. He stood up. Every time I saw a woman around her age, I'd wonder if it was her. Every time I cut a thread to save someone, I'd think about how I wasn't there to save her when she needed me. So I let go of the name. Let go of her face, her voice, everything. It was easier that way. That's horrible. That's survival. He moved to the next head. You'll understand eventually. The longer you're here, the more you'll have to give up. Memories, emotions, identity, all the things that make you you will slowly burn away until all that's left is purpose. I don't want that. Nobody does. But it's better than the alternative. He looked at the sky. Better than letting them notice. Better than being the reason humanity ends. We walked in silence for a while. I thought about Denise, about our house, about survey maps and morning coffee, and all the small pieces of the life I was losing. Already some memories were starting to feel distant, like they belonged to someone else. How long? I asked. How long until I'm like you? Hard to say. Could be months. Could be years. Time is strange here. He paused. But based on how quickly you're slipping between states, I'd guess you have weeks before the transformation is complete. And then I just stay here? Forever? Forever's a long time, Jack. He looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. But yes, you stay. You learn. You cut threads. You keep everyone safe. And what happens to my body? In the real world? He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. What do you think happens when someone's consciousness is permanently somewhere else? I didn't need him to explain further. I already knew. My body would be one more empty shell. One more coma patient with a dim thread, being tended by nurses who didn't know I was gone. I woke up back in my bed, but this time something was different. Wrong. The bedroom looked exactly right. Same furniture, same curtains, same digital clock showing 4:23 a.m. But it felt thin, insubstantial, like a photograph of a room rather than an actual room. Denise was beside me, sleeping peacefully. I reached out to touch her shoulder and my hand passed through her slightly, like she was made of fog. I pulled my hand back, staring at it. The trembling had gotten worse. My fingers looked translucent in the dim light. I got up and went to the bathroom. In the mirror, my reflection flickered. One moment I was there, solid and real. The next, I could see through myself to the wall behind me. This was it. The final stage. I was losing cohesion in the waking world. I went back to bed and lay down, but I didn't close my eyes. I stared at the ceiling and thought about everything the man had told me. About becoming trapped, about losing memories and identity, about staying in the field forever. But something nagged at me, a detail that didn't fit. The man had died in the car accident in 1952. His body died, but his consciousness remained in the field because he'd been bound there before the accident. That made sense in its own horrible way. But what about me? I wasn't dead. My body was still alive, still breathing, still lying in this bed. So why was I losing my grip on the waking world so quickly? Why was I slipping into the field more permanently with each passing day? Unless I was missing something fundamental. I closed my eyes and meditated. Not to resist the pull, but to embrace it. I let myself sink into the weight faster than ever before, plummeting through the layers of consciousness without hesitation. The gray field materialized around me instantly. The man was already there, closer than he should have been, as if he'd been waiting for me to arrive. "You're getting faster," he said. "Soon you won't need to meditate at all. You'll just be here." I want to see something, I said. What? I want to see my own thread, my own head in the field. His forgettable face went very still. Jack, show me. I stepped toward him. You said every sleeping person is here. Everyone. So where am I? Where's my head? You don't want to see that. Show me. My voice echoed across the field. Several nearby heads moaned in their sleep. The man stared at me for a long moment. Then he sighed. Follow me. We walked through the field, past thousands of sleeping faces. I'd seen this section before but hadn't paid attention. Now I looked at each face more carefully. We stopped at the cluster near the center. The man pointed. I looked down and saw myself. My own face, eyes closed, partially buried in the gray soil. The thread rising from my head was different from the others. It didn't reach up into the sky. Instead, it curved back down, forming a loop that disappeared back into my own skull. What is that? I whispered. That's you. The real you. The man knelt down beside my head. You've been here for 3 years, Jack. In a coma. Car accident on Highway 70 near Idaho Springs. You hit a patch of black ice, went off the road. Your head hit the steering wheel hard enough to crack your skull. No, let's not. I have a life. I have a wife. I work for USGS. You dream. He pointed at the looping thread. Your mind is so deep in REM sleep, so traumatized from the accident, that it's been creating elaborate waking scenarios to protect itself. Denise, your job, your house, all constructs. Dreams you've been having for 3 years while your body wastes away in a hospital bed in Denver. I wanted to argue, to deny it, but pieces were clicking into place. The way my memories before last winter were fuzzy, the way Denise never quite felt real, the way my office always seemed slightly wrong, details changing between visits. The lucid dreaming, I said slowly. That wasn't me learning a new skill. No. That was you becoming aware that you were dreaming. Your consciousness starting to wake up to the truth. He stood. In the meditation, pushing deeper. You were actually traveling down your own thread, following it to this place where you really are. So everything I thought was my life is a dream. One long, continuous dream your mind has been using as a shield against the trauma. He gestured at my sleeping face. And now that you've found your way here, now that you know the truth, you can't go back. That protective dream is shattered. I looked at my own sleeping face, at the thread looping back into itself. A closed system. A mind dreaming of waking, dreaming of living, dreaming of sleeping, and dreaming. The seizure, I said, when I collapsed at work. That wasn't my brain reconciling two states of consciousness. No. That was the doctors in the real world trying a new treatment, electrical stimulation. It disrupted your dream state temporarily, causing your consciousness to flicker between the dream life and this place. I felt hollow. Everything I thought I knew about myself was fiction. My career, mapping the Rockies, my wife, my house, my entire identity, all of it happening inside my own head, while my actual body lay broken and comatose. How long do I have? I asked. In the real world. How long before my body gives out? The man looked uncomfortable. Your vitals have been declining. The doctors are talking to your family about end-of-life decisions. What family? Denise isn't real. My dad died before the accident. Your sister, Claire, she's been visiting every week. I didn't remember having a sister. But then again, I didn't remember the accident either. So what happens now? I asked. The man gestured at the field around us. Now you stay. You learn. You help me protect all these other sleepers until your body finally stops breathing. He paused. It's not the worst fate, Jack. At least here, you have purpose. I looked up at the sky, at the things that weren't stars, at the cosmic horrors waiting to notice us. Purpose, I repeated. Right. They took me off life support on the Tuesday. I felt it happen. A lightness spreading through my chest, a release of tension I'd been carrying for 3 years without knowing it. Somewhere in a hospital room in Denver, monitors flatlined. Somewhere, my sister Claire held my hand and cried. Somewhere, a body that used to be mine stopped breathing. But I remained. The man was right. Consciousness doesn't need a physical anchor if it's already bound somewhere else. When my body died, I didn't disappear. I simply became fully, permanently part of the field. The thread above my sleeping head changed. Instead of looping back into itself, it straightened and reached up into the void black sky like all the others. But it stayed dark. Empty. A thread with nobody dreaming through it anymore. I'm sorry, the man said, standing beside me as I looked down at my own face. My eyes were still closed, expression peaceful. For what it's worth. You knew, I said. From the beginning, you knew I was already dying. I suspected. Your thread was different. Wrong. You knelt down and touched the dark thread above my head gently. But I wasn't certain until you pushed so hard to get here. The dying often reach for this place, like they're trying to find somewhere to go when their bodies give out. You could have told me. Would it have changed anything? He stood up. Would you have believed me? Or would you have fought harder, clung tighter to the dream life, made the final days of your actual life even more confused and painful? I didn't have an answer for that. We walked away from my head, leaving it behind with all the other sleepers. But as we moved through the field, I noticed something. I could see the threads more clearly now, could feel the dreams flowing through them, taste the fears and hopes of billions of sleeping minds. It's different now, I said. I can sense more. That's because you're not divided anymore. Not split between waking and sleeping, real and dream. You're fully here now. Pure consciousness, without biological static. Is that what you are too? I asked. Were you also in a coma when you found this place? He stopped walking, turned to look at me with his forgettable face, and for just a moment, I thought I saw something behind the blur, a flicker of what he might have actually looked like before he lost himself to this place. No, he said quietly. I really did die in a car accident in 1952. But not in Pittsburgh. He pointed at the field around us. Here. In this exact spot. My consciousness was so deep in meditation when the accident happened, so far into this place, that when my body died, I just stayed. So you've been here since 1952, yes. 70 years in the waking world. Much, much longer for me. He resumed walking. But the story I told you, about being a physicist, about having a wife, about Pittsburgh, that was all true. Just happened before I found this place. I looked at the endless field of heads, the threads reaching up toward things that wanted to devour us, the gray grass stretching forever in all directions. So this is it, I said. This is my eternity. Cutting threads, protecting humanity, slowly losing myself until nothing's left but purpose. Yes. And when you finally fade completely, and there's nothing left of you. He handed me his scissors. They felt solid in my hands, real in a way nothing else here did. Then it's just you, he said, until you fade too. And then maybe someone else will push too deep, ask too many questions, and end up here to take your place. He looked up at the sky. The field needs a guardian. It always has, probably always will. I gripped the scissors and looked at the sleeping heads around us. Billions of people, dreaming their shallow dreams, protected by barriers they'd never know existed. I'd spent my life mapping terrain, translating complexity into comprehensible lines. Now I'd spend my death mapping something else entirely. The field had found its new cartographer.